But yeah, because you need to have the raw bare bones of the build, and then without it. So, and just to summarize, you said no game plan and no fight control.
Yeah.
After the opening, essentially, you're just doing essentially some sort of standard 3 command center build, and you're just kind of chilling, and you don't really have any direction you end up in, right? You just kind of end up like, hey, I'm sitting here and I'm defending and I'm defending and I'm defending, and what do we do from here? And I mean, the TVT experience for you, it is only like, were you off racing Terran much before, back when we were playing Zerg, or is this like super recent Terran experience only?
First time consistently trying to macro. I did some 1-base stuff, 1-base, 2-base, all-ins before, but yeah, first time trying to macro learning standard.
Cool. Because there's different phases to TVT, right? Like you got like the early game phase, which is all just about technical units, right? It's all just technical unit interaction, whether that be a couple Reapers and Hellions, or like a Cyclone and a Liberator, or, a couple Vikings, a Raven, 2 tanks each, that sort of thing. So that's like early game. Then there's mid game, ignoring mech for now. That's just Marines and tanks, right? And medevacs and Vikings, and that's an interesting phase, because you can the thing is, if you choose to play for the air advantage and really keep committing to it, which is kind of what this build builds into a bit, but doesn't have to. But say you're just dedicated to winning the air fight, you're almost by default saying, hey, I'm going to take a 4th and take a 5th and play a very slow game, and it's all going to be about the tanks and then the Vikings and the Liberators, right? It's all about those slow crawl siege pushes. It's about sometimes doing multi-pushes, a little bit to harassment. Our bio basically ends up as units that sit behind our tanks and don't really do anything else. They're just there for when our opponent tries to break our positions, or for splitting off and doing double drops. On the other hand, you can, after the first 4 or 6 Vikings, or never build any Vikings, you can immediately go into medevac production at one of those points. And then you're playing a much more, hey, I'm all about having the Marine superiority, and I'm all about the map control, because if I let you push across the map and siege up in a good position, my tanks are not going to cut it, right? Or my Marines are not going to cut it if all the tanks are well sieged, right? But if I ever can set up a really good surround or a flank, or catch you when half your tanks are unsieged or you're moving out across the map, I've got 30 more Marines. Maybe my upgrades have even finished slightly faster. Bam, I'm just going to crush you. And suddenly Marines are the best unit ever, right? You can take much more Zerg-style flanking engagements. It's more like using a Zealot Archon army or a big Ling Bane Ravager army, where it's, hey, flank and collapse on them, right? But at the same time, if you attack into a defended choke point or into a cliff with tanks on it, etc., it looks really bad. With that style, you can do a lot more, trying to do more drops and things, waiting often with squads on the map ready to counterattack when your opponent moves out, ready to flank if the counterattack isn't open. I think that can be a very nice style, and you're still often, building tanks with that style nonstop, right? So you still do have a decent tank count. It's just you're a bit more focused on the Marine count, and you can do tricks like pick the tanks into the medevacs, boost them forward, and unload them and quickly siege them in a really good position, right? Rather than the clunky move tanks forward and try to siege them up. The Doom Drop is obviously something which opens up if the game gets messy enough, and that's also just a generic way I often encourage people to try to win TVT, is to basically focus on trying to Doom Drop, but it really depends on how they like to play and the meta and all that sort of stuff. But up to now, have you been more focused on the just non-stop Viking production? Is it a bit random? Do you have any rules for yourself in that regard?
Trying to keep the Viking production up, but it fights with other things, so I'm not certain how much I should be prioritizing it.
And,
adding on the
yeah,
adding on the second and third barracks always feels really, really late with the Vikings, with the tanks, with the upgrades. With the 30C, there's enough to spend my money for a long time.
Welcome to TVT, yes. So this is why you need to do an attack timing. So BC, I don't think, has any sort of push timing, does he?
No, he just says in the video, if nothing has happened, then when 1-1 finishes, make 2 medevacs and go.
Yeah, so this is not a bad way of playing TVT at a very high level. My criticism of it is that it involves jerking off in the corner of the map for the entire game. And if you do that, you allow your opponent to do anything they want. So there will
Yeah.
be players who power. He's 1 tank and 2 Vikings less than you at this point. But guess what? His 3rd command center's landed a minute and a half earlier, and his 2nd and 3rd barracks has been pumping out units, and his stim's done, and his shields is on the way. You know, like, so for me, the way I think about it, and obviously this comes down to the meta a little bit, how we want to do this, and what do we need to punish? Are our opponents actually cutting corners and being greedy? Who knows? Maybe if they're not pushing us, maybe we can be the one to be a bit greedy. That will, But let's start some notes, shall we? So I guess we can just go 5th November or 4th for you, whatever. So I guess focus on non-stop units equals solid equals safe. But you need to do an attack with those units to make sure you punish a greedy opponent. And one of the things I notice is until you get to maybe High Masters 1 or so, at least on the NA ladder, a lot of people power at one point or another. Where there's just, you look at the replay, there's just moments where that factory is sitting idle in the early game, like regularly, or the starport is sitting idle. But yeah, if you let them get away with it, bam. Likewise, you'll play people who never miss a beat with unit production and literally just never build a 3rd command center or their 2nd and 3rd barracks or whatever, right? And in those cases, it's like, oh, that's fine. I can take a bit more of a defensive stance. So it's definitely something you'd kind of want to... You're doing a 1 Raven build, which I really like. And this actually goes into like an air superiority push really well. So this play here is in fact amazing. If your opponent goes triple Raven and you're doing what Beastie does, one of the dangers is like every tank could get interference matrix when you're pushing, right? Because they've got tons of Raven energy. But there's a point, if you push out about 5:30, so let's look at this replay. Yeah, 5:30, we've got 2 tanks. I mean, we could already be pushing, so let's say 5 minutes we push out. Yeah. Maybe 5:20, something like that. Let's say as this 2nd tank pops, right? Or just, maybe, I often push before it's out. Yeah, maybe like 5:15, 5:20. Something about 5:15, 5:20. So we could say 5:15 move out with Raven.
Two tanks, 1 Raven.
2 Vikings, and I'm going to say 2 tanks, but if you want to wait, if you want to push out a little before the 2nd tank's ready, you can do it. Probably best to just wait. Let's just say push out with the 2 tanks, yeah. And you want to rally across the map there as well. And then you can do a really nice air superiority push, because you're going to have 2 Vikings, and most people build 2 Ravens or 3 Ravens, right? So if you arrive and you start like getting in their face that early, it can be very powerful. And you can try and siege up like on the low ground next to the production is often a common one. Occasionally on some maps you can do it in range of the gas. Sorry, what was the question?
Don't remember.
No worries. It'll come back if it's important, hopefully. But yeah, dude. So
yeah. The going do I still make the cyclone with this?
Cyclone it's a very important safety unit.
The first tank is quite delayed.
Yeah, it's a very important safety unit. The cyclone, right? Otherwise, banshees and stuff can just give you too much trouble. Random drops. The cyclone is just such a flexible
just played
unit.
a game where someone did 2 cloak banshees and they both rallied into my main, and the cyclone killed both of them, and he scanned my natural and GG'd, which was fun.
That's why we always build a cyclone. Yep. It's like if you see someone in TVT who builds a cyclone and sends it across the map to like pressure and try to kill like a Hellion or whatever on the map, you're always like, I immediately like my brow wrinkles and I'm like, I check and I'm like, did they build a 2nd cyclone? Like, what did they have at home? And I'm like, yeah, they had nothing. If I went Banshee and it went in as that cyclone was on my side of the map, ooh, they'd be in trouble. I used to love trying to poke with my cyclone, and then I, just a few games against banshees, and I was like, never again. So yeah, I think that's a really good push timing to do. And whether you scan ahead of it, often you'll have like Reaper and Hellion alive from earlier in the game, right? Or I don't actually know what you build in this game, but at least a Reaper.
No Hellion, just 1 Reaper. Reaper Marine. Reactor.
So how do you... Defend 2 Reaper jumping into the main. You just got to micro your butt off a little bit, I guess. Oh, fair enough. Yeah, okay. And then you go such a quick cyclone, actually, that it's okay. So even if something gets out of control a little bit, yeah. And there's an SCV scout early, so you're confirming that you're not being 3-rexed. Yeah, you'd have those 2 Marines pop out. Yeah, worst case scenario, 2 Reapers pop in and delay your starport a few seconds. And then you just put an SCV back on it. It's fine. No worries. Yeah, that'd be cool. So you don't have a lot of flexibility. You do have the Cyclone as your mobile unit, though, right? So the Cyclone can go ahead and check what's up. And I guess the scary thing is doing a push like that and sieging your tanks, and they just drop all auto turrets on the tanks, which is why you kind of want your Ravens and your Viking to lead, right? If possible. So with that sort of push, you know, Viking Ravens lead and try to, you know, take out a Raven before it lands spells, right? And sometimes if they're ready to fight, sometimes that means just immediately dropping your auto turrets and even focus firing them on the Raven as well. Sometimes it means not sieging your tanks and learning to recognize that. But that's something you'll learn with experience of how to judge that situation a bit better, and maybe always dropping a scan ahead. But often if you can just get a nice siege up location, you can win the game with that push. The first couple of Vikings and tanks. I guess what I would say is
it's the TVT hellbutt timing.
Yeah, and the thing is, this also keeps you safe. So I really like watching like Clem vs Special and these sort of matches, and obviously all the TYs and stuff, because you'll see sometimes a player does power and drop a quicker 3rd command center. They cut a corner and do this or that. I mean, Innovation, the crazy motherfucker, will be in a deciding match and he'll be like, yeah, let's go 3cc before factory, and you're like, okay, you're actually a crazy person. And you know, he's playing Cure, who's like 1 bases 65% of his TVTs. It just kills him with Reaper Alien, and you're like, okay, that was fucking dumb Innovation. What are you doing? But you know, it's a calculated gamble from him. He's like, you won't go for your silly 1 base shenanigans in the final game. And Cure is one of the least afraid Terrans who is just psychotically aggressive sometimes. So yeah, Cure, I think, strategically doesn't make particularly great decisions sometimes. Like we've seen him say, I'm going to play bio on the biggest map in the map pool against Cyril on 300 ping. That seems like a good idea. I think Q is the most talented player who really needs TY to coach him, and he'd probably win championships. But anyways, random aside, I think it's a pretty good build order. I think just remembering strategically, right? Strategically, we can always power to get ahead, or non-stop units and use them to push and punish, right? So that's kind of the goal. The goal is like one of those two things, right? So we could always say your opponent goes really aggressive,
actually,
does a really one base heavy build, and you crush it. Yep.
Yeah. Just when you're done, can we go back to 6:30 and look at something?
Sure.
Okay. You were saying?
Just make sure you keep in mind that, like, if you crush a one base push from your opponent, but say you had to build a Viking first rather than a Raven to add some safety, or you needed to make some adjustment here or there, which you probably don't really need to do with your build because you get such a fast cyclone, I think you'd be fine, and a bunker as well. But yeah, essentially I think you'd want to look at that situation and say, ooh, I could choose here not to go aggressive and to just cut a round of units, right? Not build Vikings, get your 3rd command center, get your 2nd and 3rd barracks, get your double eBay, and then go back to non-stop tech units production. So that's a choice that you can absolutely make. So we've got to remember the two sides of the coin. So normally we're not going to do that. Your default is going to be build units non-stop, go pressure your opponent. If they've got a good unit count, we don't really need to do anything. But if they've been a greedy fucker who's powered, way ahead on their barracks, their 3rd command center, their eBays, we should have a good window to punish them, potentially even winning the game.
So it's not changing the build, it's just moving out with the units I have at a time.
Yeah.
Okay.
A few other points on that push, by the way. Siege the top of their main ramp production.
If they if they went factory if they went factory before CC, I still do this, don't I? only if they're
I'm sure
still
Beastie
on
has
one.
a
If they're
has an
still on one
explanation
base,
of it,
do I?
right? I'm sure he has an explanation of like how to react. I assume you don't need to though, right? This seems like a
I mean,
just
yeah,
generically, if you make it past the
because
first stage, like obviously you need to react against 3x Reaper and that sort of stuff with bunkers on the high ground and command center on the high ground.
I didn't mean that. I meant the
You
5,
mean
515, 520 push you're talking about.
oh, so you're just saying like, oh, if they maybe have more tech units than you because they've gone earlier factory, you might be in trouble, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So if their command center is a lot later than yours, for sure, because you're doing a more defensive build, that definitely means more often than not. Like if you were doing a double gas factory starport opening, you would be able to more often just blindly commit without even thinking about it. If you've hit your production, your timing right. In your case, if you're hitting someone whose command center is quite a bit later, they've hit their perfect factory starport production, they're well positioned. Yes, you are going to encounter more situations where it's like, oh, this is actually not a good fight for us. Like, this guy's built plenty of units, let's go home. So learning to recognize that will definitely be a skill set.
So still go, but turn back if
Yeah.
it's not looking good. Yeah. Okay.
So scan every time question mark we've added in there. So what did you want to look at 6:30?
Just the building placement, something.
I hate his factory placement.
One with that.
Let's take a look at that. As long as he doesn't put anything above it, it's fine. We'll see.
It's when he adds the second or third racks, the racks he adds in the top left. When the add-on is there, that walls in the tank, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because
So
he adds another racks above the factory.
yeah. I mean, I think it. As long as there was no add-on on the barracks above the factory, it would be fine. It could pop out to the top right, but obviously you're going to put a reactor there.
He
so
has
yeah.
to lift it off and then
Yeah.
put it next to the start pod. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would never put my buildings like this just because generally as a system, I always like to have, my avenue approach. So I might have a third barracks below the starport and then a
Do you
two-space
mean
gap
the?
and then bam, bam. So for me, I'm always got neat rows with double space gaps wherever I can. Now this space gets a little bit cramped, so I might not have a double hex gap up here, but then we will have bam, bam, double space gap there so tanks can move around.
So what's wrong with the factory there?
I mean, the factory there is okay. It's just this barracks up against it makes it awkward.
Oh,
If
I
this
see.
barracks was 2 spaces to the left, the one with the tech lab, then he'd have a beautiful road through his base. He's built, Main Avenue or whatever the fuck, I don't know, Grand Parade, if the Terran base, there'd be a lovely little thing there. I also don't like the barracks on the right hand side, just because me as a general rule, I like to just leave those double space gaps everywhere so I can move tanks in and out of my base freely and that sort of stuff. It also just means less choke points in my base. So if Beastie gets doom dropped in the back of his base, his units are going to have to go around the left hand side. If they go around the right, they're going to get funneled incredibly hard, or they're going to have to run all the way around behind the mineral line. So for me, just generally, I like to have nice open spaces to have as much freedom. Same reason I don't like to crowd the area behind my mineral line when I'm playing, say, Zerg, because I'm using melee units and I don't want to create little choke points that Marines or Zealots could get stuck in, and Zerglings are going to struggle to get rid of them. In this case, it's more about being able to stim my units into my base quickly and move tanks in and out of my main base quickly.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, it's not super important though. Cool. Is that enough from that replay? I think, yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Now we have a plan.
Yeah. All right, let's go take a look at the other ones. So in terms of that, we've got a poke timing. We still need to choose from there exactly what we're going to do. Yeah, this is Beastie Cutie, guys. How's it going in Serbia, by the way, mate?
It's yeah. I don't know how to respond to that.
No worries. Yes, pig coaching. You can purchase that as a gift for someone else. Guys were asking in chat. Thank you, Enrius. I'm glad you liked the flow files from yesterday. And it looks like some people are fighting. Deep breaths, guys, and it's okay. I know some people are losing their minds. I've been saying everyone don't follow the election coverage. It's literally the worst thing you can do. Wait another day till it's called, check it then. Take a deep breath, get some sunshine, talk to your friends and family, realize that the sun is not going to crash into the earth. We are not having a mass extinction event. Also, we don't live in caves. Life's not that bad. Deep breaths, everybody. We are having a, once again, until the election is completely called, a no politics in chat rule. So thank you. Appreciate it, everybody. I know some people just want to vent and stuff, but we are specifically creating. I thought it would be called by now. I don't know. I forget how quick and how slow these elections take. So I thought it would just be yesterday, but we're going to extend it to today as well, just because I understand some people, get a bit too. Some people just want to let off a bit of steam, make a comment, and then other people want to fight with them, and it brings my mood down looking at chat when it's like that. So we're going to have a nice chill time playing some StarCraft, which, believe it or not, this is what this stream is about. I'm not Destiny, so I don't want to just shout at people pretending to sound smart and trying to start arguments for drama's sake.
Unaffected by the rest of the world. Thankfully. StarCraft.
Indeed. And our own little we're futuristic commanders. That's that's our thing, man. So I've logged back into StarCraft after unlogging from that. You said you had a couple of your own replays as well, right? So
Yeah.
Let's take a glance through one or two of those, because I want to talk about the mid game onwards to highlight some points when there's actual interaction going on.
Yeah. Don't see you.
Oh, it's logged me back into NA. Okay. It put me on NA when it logged back in. Okay. No worries, Philosopher. We'll see how it goes. Yeah. Okay. Shoot me that invite. Or I'll shoot you one. I'll give you Toledo. There we go. Yeah, so I think medevac production could be really sick. As a focus, if we want to be more mobile. I think Viking tank can also be amazing. I think one of the most interesting things though, in TVT is it's so much about just moving around the map and setting up these forward defensive positions, you know? It's not about diving in and trying to kill stuff, but it's about, you know, being active on the map. And I think we get a lot better at that by using a more marine heavy army and rotating around and looking for openings, and just simply by forcing your opponent to constantly siege on siege and move around defensively and all that. It can be really fantastic as a focus. We can do that off a solid 3-base macro build as well.
This game is me boxed in on 2 or 3 bases for the whole game. Not, because no particular game plan, just doing the build and making the units.
Yeah, well, already having that first push time is going to be great. And I guess you can follow through with like the, hey, at 1-1, let's go start pushing. Once you do start pushing, like Beastie said though, yeah, I'll criticize the build and look at things in a little bit. But once you do start doing that, what's your game plan?
Add-ons done. Took long enough.
From which put, sorry?
So when you're when you start pushing out with 1-1 and stuff. So after this first push I've just told you to do, Beastie was saying in his video, like he says, we get 1-1, you grab your marines, your tanks, and you start pushing. So in terms of general pushing at 1-1, you know, tanks, marines, Vikings, etc. Do you have any game plan at all with how you start pushing around the map and like what your 3-base production is, etc.? Like, or do you like? Let's start with production. You've got 5 barracks, a factory, a starport.
Six racks. Well, 5 racks, factory, starport. Then add 1 racks, 1 factory. Keep making tanks. If the opponent keeps making
Did you say
Vikings,
1 racks,
then,
1 factory?
Yeah.
So just a six
That's
barracks.
what he says. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Should there be more?
I've never heard of anyone adding a 6th barracks. That's fascinating. I mean, you could do it. I'm always a big fan of, it's like, if we have money, we add two barracks at once, or 3, depending on how much we want to kind of give ourselves a bit more room for error. But second factory plus barracks, and then what do we go fourth command center after that, or is fourth
He
command
says
center earlier?
four CC with the move out. So add production once the third is saturated and the money starts getting high.
Okay,
Then
so
the
fourth
third
CC
factory
as we
production
move
is
out.
racks, 2 factories, starport, then keep making tanks, and if the opponent's making Vikings still, then keep making Vikings, otherwise switch into Liberators at some point.
Okay, and so second factory plus barracks. I mean that's up to 6 barracks. So yeah, normally 3 base production gets a bit heftier than that. So is there anything we evolve it from there? I would say plus 2 times barracks, just so we can up that production a bit more. And that's going to be a super marine tank focused army, but I think that's completely fine because you got double tank production. If you want to hit non-stop marine production, we definitely lean in that direction. If we want to hit non-stop Viking production, which it seems like, you know, the build is kind of setting us up to focus on from what I've seen, that's going to be a bit of a bigger part, is never missing tank production, never missing Viking production, adding the libs as soon as we can. So there'd be like a standard thing where it's like,
Base is under attack.
if you don't have any info and you're at like 6, 7 Vikings, you should be scanning them. Just try and see their army and go, is this guy building Vikings? Because if you go to like 8 or 10 Vikings and they don't really have any and they're just building medevacs, it's very bad. It's just a huge amount of money in units that kind of suck. So if you ever find yourself with an excess of Vikings, you want to split Vikings off and use them to harass. Fantastic units to just queue into mineral lines whenever other things are happening. If you can just be like, oh, queue a Viking behind their natural, queue a Viking in their main mineral line, continue doing other things. Don't even micro them. So Vikings are actually really nice kind of mini liberators, I like to think them of, if you just queue them to land in a mineral line. But definitely something you got to be careful about getting caught too heavy on the Vikings. So yeah, I think that should be good enough production, honestly. Technically, you can go third factory. You can get 2 more starports and a fusion core, or even just a second starport with a reactor and a fusion core. These things are all fantastic for evolving your later stages, but I kind of feel like there is so much to be done with your army. I mean, there's a lot of the time I just tell people, like, don't even go past 3 base, you know? Just make your 7 barracks, your 2 factories, and just keep building units on 3 base, and don't even bother taking a 4th, or like if you do, you build it on location. The whole idea is we don't want to put APM into it. Uthermal says ups, by the way. Is that a meme? So you want to help coach? It's Mark in our chat. I don't think so. I think he's just messaged me accidentally off the friends list. Anyways, I was like, oh, we're going to get you Thermal to backseat coach. This would be amazing. Obviously, his TVT knowledge is a lot better than mine. I'm much more of a fundamentals TVT guy. But yeah, your macro is pretty good, dude. Your macro is pretty good. After this shitty start you had, holy shit. Not bad, man.
I was a bit confused looking at the replay. When the Hellions dropped in, he was already up in SCVs.
The 2 Reapers fucked you. So that was the first thing. Let's go back and just look at this bit by bit. So, looking at your build order, your first Reaper went across the map and died. Right? Let's take a look at it. Ah, you got a boner.
When did I send it across?
You chased him. He came to your natural.
Oh
and
yeah,
you
yeah,
chased him.
yeah. That's why.
Terrible. Very, very bad. Yeah, if you're gonna go across
Yeah,
around
I forgot.
the point where
People make 2 Reapers, and then
yeah, and you just can't chase like that. Yeah.
okay.
With your build, you can't go across with your Reaper at all until you've got your other units up. Let's also just take a quick little look-see, because you go Reaper into Reactor, is it? Or is it Reaper Marine Reactor? Okay, it's Reaper
Marine. Yeah, Marine Reactor.
Okay, yeah, like your factory's on time. That's like okay.
It's factory gas reactor bunker.
Yeah. Yeah, reactor goes down. How long till we build these 2 Marines? It's very important. We immediately go Tech Lab, Marines, and then Cyclone, yeah. This is what I was talking about with the 2 Reaper. Worst case scenario, they do delay your starport. Like, you are being greedy here. They also can run a Hellion into your natural at the same time. And that's just like you are doing a greedy build. But you can take a little bit of damage, it's fine. In this case, obviously he's going to do damage while also having an expand build that's quite greedy. So that kind of sucks for us, but it is the nature of the beast. We got a quicker reactor and whatnot. If your Reaper was here though, it would already be sitting on that ledge, right? So it would have landed a few hits. It would have then hopefully pulled back after landing 1 or 2 hits. And then we would rally these 2 Marines over and we should be fine. 2 Marines plus the Reapers are damaged. Maybe we lose the SCV on the starport. That should be fixed. It's very important for you, whenever you're defending pressure, to remember to start your cyclone in the midst of the pressure. I know you didn't have the minerals right here at this moment, but that's the most important thing. Because if things get chaotic, building out of that factory in the midst of it, that's like a bit of muscle memory you've got to build. Because that cyclone is the answer to everything. Every next step, the cyclone solves. So just something to keep in mind there. A lot of people miss that factory production when they get in a micro scenario. Whether it be a 3-Rex Reaper or something more like this, where it's just a little Reaper Hellion dive. It's very important to be on top of that.
Well, that killed 5 SCVs.
Oh,
which is unfortunate.
Yeah, so that's what did big damage to
yeah.
you. Was just your Reaper going across and dying. You cannot lose your first Reaper. As much as I laugh at people who lose their Reaper and just leave TVT, there is a reason why they do that. Usually,
this is the reason.
Yeah, they're pretty bad TVT players normally, because like normally you should wait to see if the other guy actually gets the punish on you to follow it up. And it's also one of those things where these are the same people who complain about TVT all day, and yet they do a build order like yours. They're like, oh, you just die if you make one mistake. And I'm like, oh, have you thought about not doing the greediest build order possible? Like, are you fucking stupid? Like, you can't complain about the matchup being volatile and throw away the only unit you build in your greedy as fuck build order, right? This is you know, the classic I'm a StarCraft player mindset. This should never be in here. Why? What's going on with our control groups? You've got your Cyclone and your Raven on separate control groups. So the way you want to do it, your Raven and Cyclone, that's your anti-drop, anti-Banshee squad. So Raven, Cyclone, always patrol in the corner of your main base. And especially with you, since you have a bunker, your natural's super safe. So you could technically rally everything else into your main if you want, but you'd probably still just leave it at your natural by default. But always the Raven and the Cyclone in the edge of your main base patrolling. This would have got shut down if you did that, and then you'd be fine. That's just a default rule of TVT.
That was one of my questions. Where does the Cyclone hang out?
Yeah, so those are on control group 2. Like early, patrolling main immediately every game. Rest of army on 1. That's the way I do it. Maybe you do it slightly differently, whatever the control groups are, but just make sure it makes sense for you in that sort of
I can do that
scenario. Yeah.
Okay. You say he drives 2 Hellions past the bunker.
Yeah.
So I do need something in the natural, don't I?
Yeah, I mean, well, technically, you're just going to leave everything there by standard, because you don't know if he's going to do a proper bust on you or what, right? You don't really know what's happening. Cyclone and a Raven should be enough. A lot of people you'll see, high-level players, just leave their units by default rallied onto their ramp, or like between their main and natural, just in a central location so they can respond to things. But, I mean, 2 Hellions running in is really not a problem. That's super chill. But even if you just had a tank sieged or something, easy peasy. So that's like, at this point, you would have just been in a way better position. You get a way quicker extra barracks, blah, blah, blah. If we look at the way your opponent's playing, he's got like a bit haphazard with some of his macro, but these are the advantages you take when you're ahead. His third might be later, his macro might be worse, but he's building his third on location. He's rallying to it despite his main and natural both not being saturated. He's dropping mules on all of his far mineral patches. Oh, Jesus. You know about mules on mineral patches, right? I've talked to you about that.
On the close patches and
Yeah.
not repeatedly on the same patch.
Yeah, and even if you just always drop them, I mean, obviously you don't want to drop all your mules on one patch, right? If you're dropping 10 mules, whatever, you'll just drop them and they'll automatically spread out. Who cares, right? But like if you've got 2 mules early, you should go drop or drop, preferably. But there is nothing worse than people who continually mule these faraway patches. This guy's already mined out 2 of his main base patches. Notice you've still got 8 patches. Yeah, you've been really good with this. He's fucked up his own mining really early by dropping mules on those patches. So he just can't get value out of as many SCVs. So for him, he's actually going to get way more value if he actually gets a quicker 4th base and stuff. And like that sort of stuff becomes very important just because he's dropping mules on far patches intermittently, which is, some of them are on close patches, but that can definitely hurt. You were kind of behind. We're using the game hard overlay, by the way, chat. But yeah, you were kind of behind. Obviously, at this point, it's like, well, ideally, we've got a few more marine spotters, right? And like you had this sort of vision. Ideally, we'd have like 2 marines, 2 marines, 2 marines, marine spotter on the edge. We'd have like marine spotter on the edge. But even better than that,
he does emphasize that.
Yeah, even better, we'd actually be pushing him though, right? As well. So, well, when you're attacking your opponent, it's not so bad to have a few gaps in your map vision, right? Because you're forcing where the action is. So, yeah. And if you are feeling turtled up or behind, of course, there's always a point somewhere here where you can go 1, 2, 3 turrets and 1, 2, 3 turrets on those extreme drop edges. I always favor those over a sensor tower. Some people prefer to go sensor tower first, turrets later. Whatever, up to you. I always prefer the turrets because they actually kill drops. Sensor towers rely on you actually having shit nearby and noticing it and reacting. Things that rely on you not being a terrible player. Something I struggle with on a daily basis, watching my minimap, But yeah, we were just on the back foot all game longs. TVT is very hard when you're on the back foot. Ooh. Yeah, definitely needed to spread out if we were going to go for that one, but it was always going to be a bit nasty. We were already so screwed. Cool. So if we were the one pushing our opponent, I just want to do a little visual exercise here in this game. If you're the one who is in control at this 8-minute stage, whatever, pushing across, opponent's got these 3 bases. Say he's just turtling. Where do you aim to push? What's your angle? And this is something you should probably visualize for every map and kind of define a little bit.
The last base. So what he does is okay, isn't it? Has it sorry, my alt key isn't working. There. So he has the tanks here behind the sort of triple pillar.
Yeah. You can, especially if you've got the air advantage, that high ground kind of works for you even more, right? Because you can kind of siege tanks in range of their tanks on your side of the pillar if they don't have scans or air units. On the other hand, if we came around the far side, then we could kind of come from a bit more of a surprise
high ground
angle.
there?
Yeah, this high ground, bit more of a surprise angle. We're not like walking through tank fire as obviously. Even without knowing where your opponent's sieged, good chance there'll be tank sieged covering that front. But the good thing about this angle is you can always pick up and drop in the main as well, right? You can kind of threaten both at the same time. So just by being there, even with no plan of going to the main, if your opponent has any self-respect, they're going to be shitting their pants and rallying their units into the main base, right? They're worried, number 1, about you getting tanks in range of the mineral line. Number 2, picking up and dropping in the main. And you literally could be sieged, not even in range of anything, just chilling. And you're just building a 4th on location, building a 5th on location, adding barracks, starting my 2-2, but whatever, But suddenly, he's got so much to worry about, right? So it's just about getting in these positions where he can threaten multiple areas. You come down here, you can't get in that siege location. Okay, that's fine. We rotate around the left, we break those rocks, right? And you can kind of just keep moving between new angles and looking for these siege ups. And sometimes if you hold a location there, like I said, while macroing for a while, and you're not really making any plays with it, well, you can grab your new army and then push that one down the left and try to come in with a different siege angle. Or, load it up and boost in and drop in a base or that sort of thing. So there's a lot of ways to do it, but it's always about patient moving forward, using aggression more as pressure put on your opponent so that it's easier for you to macro better than them, right? And easier for them to go and attack into your sieged tanks. We want to give them as many opportunities as possible to attack into our sieged tanks. So, especially since you're focusing on the Viking advantage, that gives you a very clear way of not even needing to be as complicated with that multi-prong and rotating. Because if you get the Viking advantage, you can just methodically shift forward, right? Whenever you've got the air control and they're not scanning, you can just try to move 2 tanks up just in range of one of their tanks. Worst comes to worst, they scan it. If we've got energy, we can even interference matrix that tank. But, you know, a lot of the time there'll be moments you just move the tanks forward, or your lib comes forward and forces them to unsiege and allows your tanks to move in range of a command center, right? So it really just gives you a nice, clear way of getting that advantage. And I would say if you're really good at hitting your Viking count, you're going to find a natural point where maybe at 8 Vikings, you just automatically add 1 Liberator. It's just part of your build that you get used to doing because you're so consistently like overtaking them in Vikings at that point anyway.
Add 2 medevacs. Add 2 medevacs, did you say?
1 Liberator. 1 Liberator.
1 Liberator, sorry.
Yeah. So like you can even go 0 medevacs for quite a long time. Obviously, you need to be more careful with your stim usage if you have no medevacs for a long time. But you're jumping up that air control, which is really super cool, right? So I think that'll be a lot of fun. If you can do that. Yep.
Assuming no liberators have air control, trying to do the gradual push forwards, do you simply have to look at their tanks and try to see where the edge of their vision is?
Yeah, you tend to get a feel for it, but sometimes you do click on their tanks as well, right? So like, you know how you can see the white dotted line when you click on a tank? It's fucking a bit hard on this map, actually. Jeebus.
And
it's actually invisible on my... I mean,
you can see...
This is why I
see it, but
I shouldn't be playing on this level of graphics, I swear. For some of these maps, I should turn the graphics back down. What do you play on?
That is medium. I'm looking at yours. That is totally invisible.
Yeah, it's actually invisible on some. Like, I can see it on the edges on some areas, and then there's ones where it's just like, it's almost not there.
Mine, I can see it.
Barely see it, but certain angles, like, it is there technically. But you can't see it on certain angles. It's crazy.
I've never checked this. You can in game click on the enemy tank and it shows the range.
Yes. Yeah. You can actually click. Sometimes I do that. You get really good at judging it though, right? Like a tank can always naturally see to. If we can just look at this tank on the left hand side of yours, you can see tank can shoot to there, can see to there, right? So you've actually got quite a bit of wiggle room. Because you only need to move just barely over that white line and you can shoot his tank. And there's still a full tank space before you're in his vision, essentially.
Is that a 2 range difference between the sight and the range?
Looks like it. Yeah, that looks like a 2 range difference, doesn't it? Maybe even... I don't think it's 3. But maybe? Because they have 13 range, actually. Yeah, that's a 3. That's a 3 range difference. Maybe 4?
SC2.
It's quite a lot.
SC2 helper.
Yeah, I'm not good at estimating those things.
Oh, no, it doesn't. Where's the vision?
Range 13.
Where am I looking? It's 2. Yeah, vision 11, range.
Vision 11, range 13 is 2? Okay, cool. Of course, it's hard to say because the vision kind of, you know, the squares aren't, it kind of seems to extend a bit and things are kind of overlap a little bit. That line should be dead in the center of where the 13 range is. So the splash actually hits quite a bit further and stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. No, basically you move forward. So I find at my level, when people are in that situation, they know that you could move the tanks forward. So I almost never shift the tanks forward like that with the vision advantage because people are just scan. They just scan constantly. And I go, cool, just by being here, they're going to keep scanning. So something I actually have to try to remind myself of, hey, if they're not actually that methodical at scanning, I've got to notice that and go, ooh, this guy doesn't really respect the slow tank creep. I have to start doing it now to punish him for that. But my default mode is I don't even bother doing the slow tank creep because I'm like, nah, they always like, as I move forward, I start sieging, they scan and kill my tanks. And I'm like, God damn it. So I don't even bother with it. I just kind of go, hey, this is forcing them to scan constantly while I'm not, right? That is doing damage in of itself, remember? I talked about the damage of they're rallying to their main, they're panicking, it's hard for them to macro, they're forgetting 2-2, while you're like, hey, I'm building a base, I'm taking my upgrades, right? You're relaxed. But then there's also the damage of they're dropping scans constantly, which is each one is 200 minerals, 200 minerals, 200 minerals.
300, isn't it?
It's 225 if they put it on
225.
Used to be more back in the day, but they lowered all of the back row mechanics, remember? Heart of the Swarm to Legacy, so... Yeah, I don't know how much it used to be, 275, 300, I don't know, something maybe 250, something a bit higher. but they did lower it in Legacy along with the injects getting lowered as well. So anyways, let's hop out of that game. And can we take a look? Does Beastie have a video only looking at his replay versus AI, or does he have a video versus actual?
No, there's a game. There's a game as well.
Okay. Can you link it up to me? I think we
Yep.
could watch that together and just kind of discuss some stuff and really absorb it. I think the best focus
Where
for us,
is
it's
it?
up to you, of course, as always. If you have something else you'd rather do.
Oh no, it was the TVP one.
Beastie Cutie TVT YouTube. Let's take a look.
It's called How to Play Terran vs. Terran in 2020.
I got it.
No, he doesn't have it in an actual game. Just there was a TVP one, which I was thinking.
Okay, so he's only got that. He's talking about how to wall off, blah, 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 breaks it down. He says, okay, here's the thing. Okay, so he doesn't actually have a game. That's fine. But, I mean, we could take a look at a little bit of the finals, maybe, of Maru TY, if you want to watch a little bit of that. I don't think we have...
No one did this. Neither of them did this.
Oh, they didn't know for sure.
They're on a higher plane of existence than.
We can look at their army management though, right? I'm talking more mid game onwards because you just need reps right now with like getting that first pressure timing down and stuff.
Just before we do that,
yeah.
Mechanics thing. Not only in TVT, but in TVT, I have 4 tech labs, 4 reactors on the racks. I have to go Marauder, then 8 times Marine, don't I? Because otherwise the Marines will get queued up on the tech labs.
They will queue on reactors first.
Once
you go above the 2 Marines on each, once you go above 2 on each, it'll do that. So. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So a problem you can run into is if you're not careful with it, you spend all your minerals on Marauders and you only build like 2 Marines with whatever's left over. And you do that like 3 or 4 times in a row. And then a fight happens and you go, where the fuck is my damage? So if you're a bit mineral starved, you do have to be a bit careful. But yes, that is what I tend to do. I'm not actually sure how other players do it. I know that I was watching like a TVP. I was watching Special on his first person view when I was casting him last week versus Zaun in a little show match. And he was manually clicking his barracks in the first like 6 minutes on the tech labs to build Marauders. And I do the same thing. And that's just us being like very manual and specific in exactly what we're building, right? Like, so I'll be like, cool, I've done my...
Why do you need to do that?
It's
to make Marauders, you say?
Yeah, it's just like it's kind of like we're double checking what each barracks is doing. It's just like it's like a super hands-on. I have extra APM and extra attention right now, so I'm going to put a ridiculous amount of detail into this because it's the early game, and it would be crazy to do this later. But this is like, oh, I've just got my 2nd and 3rd barracks on tech labs. Let's click tech lab stim, click tech lab shields, and then go build Marauder. And I'll, and I might have like my reacted barracks still rallied to my bunker at the front while those 2 are rallied into the main because I'm worried about the 4-gate blink coming in. And I'll only do this maybe 2 production cycles at most, but it's just an interesting thing. I saw Special do that and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Because I'd noticed that I was doing it sometimes and I was like, kind of like, oh, is this really inefficient? Because it's like a weird thing to do, isn't it? And when I saw Special do it, it was kind of reaffirming. But it's also, I'm like, it's something I don't think either of us should be doing if the game is chaotic in any way, right? Like, it's something we do if the game's nice and chilled out and we're very comfortable and we're going to kind of go, oh yeah, let's build Marauder, double checking because it's easy in the midst of microing my Hellion run by or my drop to be like, oh, I actually already have 4 Marines queued up. I don't need to queue 2 more Marines, and that sort of thing. I got to make sure these units are queued up and stuff. So I'm right now glancing at the old TVT Air Superiority Daily, which is like the most 1-basey opening of all time, into the same sort of push as what I've been telling you to do, but like much more committed because your command center's so much later. But it's the same idea of like, get a Raven, get out a bunch of Vikings and go do a push. God, I was so slow at getting the content out in the old days. It's like 30 minutes of explanation for 2 minutes of action. Jesus. Give me 1 sec. TVT gets me a bit sweaty. It's getting a bit hot in here. I forgot to turn my aircon on, so just press that on. Sorry, I just wanted to take a look at how this old push looked and see if there's any old wisdom to be gleaned from this old match. So this one was, like what, hitting 545 or something it was meant to be. It's like way faster, but obviously there's a reason for that. And it was always try to find a dirty position. 610. Yeah, I mean, if I wasn't shit, it could be 545 though, I think. This was my first year of really playing Terran. I was still figuring stuff out.
And
yeah.
Is it important to have the Vikings and the Raven on the same group? Because I have separate caster groups normally.
I use them on the same group. I mean, what else would you do? Do you put like Vikings just with the main army otherwise?
No, otherwise the Vikings on one group.
So you have like three separate
group.
control groups? I mean, you could do that where the Raven is just told to follow the Vikings or told to follow a siege tank, and then you just manually tell it to do its thing. You can do that. I don't think there's any reason the Raven needs to be on the same control group as the Viking. It's a convenience thing because most players want to only have 2 control groups with their army. You know, it's like you look at like the best player in the world and we're like, God, what are we going to learn from his control groups? And it's like always at any moment you open it and you're like, oh, he doesn't have any control groups like 70% of the time. I mean, he's got 1 most of the time or 2, you know? It's like, oh, how's he microing these 3 different oracles and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, none of them are control group. Nope, it's all manual. And you're like, Jesus Christ. There are times where they'll do it, but it's often where we're so impressed and we're looking for that insight is in the really chaotic situations. And surprise, surprise, in the chaotic situations, people are not using control groups that much, which makes perfect sense. You don't have a super strict system to roll with the chaos, do you? You kind of need to be more fluid. So it makes sense you'd break away from those control group habits, right?
That's the following. That's what I do when I move out, and then the Raven follows the tank, the Medivacs follow a tank, and then when it needs to do something, it's still there on its own group.
That's the way. So whoops. We can watch just a little bit of the finals here as well while we think of any other questions that pop up. So I'm on map 1 Eternal Empire. Let's take a little look see.
Just looking at my questions, is taking I'm doing this in all matchups where he's all the builds he has where he takes the third gas 20-30 seconds before the fourth gas. I'm just taking them at the same time. Is that terrible?
In your replay of your execution, there was 30 seconds of tank production, and that can be lessened if you fix that. Normally you do want to get that third gas nice and early because you're trying to build tanks non-stop, Raven, and then Vikings non-stop. Because you're focusing on that push, the third gas going down is quite important. So normally the way we would do it, and So what does Beastie say with the third and fourth gas timing? He says fourth gas is just a few seconds after.
He said in this replay, he just says it was a bit late. That was a mistake. Take it a bit sooner, but definitely later than the third gas.
Yeah. So normally for me, my standard way, and this is off a very different opening. It's not a super fast expand, but normally my rule would be third gas, before natural even finishes. In your case, your natural's so early, but third gas would be nice and fast, right? Nice and fast. I can't know the exact
that
time.
early to get the cyclone, then the tank straight away.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. Like I was saying before, expansion is if you're doing a double gas factory before expand opening. So I don't know how it lines up with because you're doing a quicker expand. So I'm not sure how fast. I'm just saying third gas nice and fast. Then it would be, I would normally not get a fourth gas until after I've gone third CC, second plus third racks. And then I line up my fourth gas with the eBays is how I would do it. And that's quite a big gap between third gas and the fourth gas. And that's usually the general rule for most I'm going to non-stop build tanks and whatnot builds. You'll see people who power stay 2 gas for a long time. If they cut a bit of that production and they go for the, the quicker third command center, the quicker barracks, because it's a more mineral focused opening. And if they get past that stage, I mean, you see the way that sort of build, and you'll see it in some pro matches. You see the way that lines up against someone who's doing what you're doing with non-stop tech unit production, and it's kind of insane. Because there's a moment where they're like, oh yeah, I got 25 Marines with 1/1 stim and shields. And you're like, oh, I have none of those upgrades. I have a few more Vikings and tanks than you, but by golly, that's a scary pack of upgraded Marines. Like, I don't want to be dealing with that. That's actually so frightening, So it's just kind of cool to think about the difference that happens there, and that ties in with the gas timings. So yeah, I think you want to get a pretty quick third gas. The goal is always, and let's just add that sub point, just need enough gas to support non-stop production.
Yeah.
Non-stop factory port production. And obviously it's like, arguably we could cut a bit of production once we move out with that tank push, but you are a little vulnerable if they kind of drop you or hit you with something. If you've moved out with everything and cut production at the same time, that's, very dangerous if you get hit by something. But it gives you a much more powerful follow-up. So often you can do things like build a third command center on location if you commit hard to the non-stop tech units, right? So there's these little things where you're saying, I'm going to win the fight. I'm going to have enough units to be out on the map pushing. Therefore, I can be a bit greedier behind it and that sort of stuff, which is interesting.
Okay. All right. This feels much better. More direction, more understanding.
Awesome. Well, I actually haven't watched the start of this finals yet, and I'm watching it. I'm like, why the fuck does TY have Marauders in his army? Did he think Maru was playing?
They did funny mech into bio switches, both of them this game.
Because I saw Magfield Cyclones, and I guess TY really bought it. Hey, whereas Maru didn't build any Marauders. There's so many Marauders out. Holy shit. What a fascinating series. I mean, if we go right back here. Yeah, he went for a good little pack of Cyclones, didn't he? How many factories did he go early on? Was it just 2 for Maru? I think it was
I forget who it was. One of them added 2 factories, then cancelled them.
Ah, okay, very cool, very cool. Because I was like, it's like TY is such a big brain player. I'm pretty sure this is not something that you're meant to do. The Marauders just don't have enough damage output. Like, they seem kind of nice. They're more forgiving, right? And then you realize that like, oh, the other guy has 2 Marines that each one does more DPS than a single Marauder for each Marauder, and you're like, oh no. Oh, what a fascinating game. That's a really funky opening, yeah.
Just later on that game, neither of them ever stays on biotank Viking Liberator the whole game. Just Maru goes into 15-20 Ravens and so
yeah, because they're very good at not dying. No,
Yeah.
no, you should not be. It's kind of like, you got to stay Ravager Bane, right? It's like that sort of thing where it's like, wait, you got to get good at using that comp first before you deserve to go to the next stage kind of thing. Because it's such a complicated late game where it's like, you actually can have amazing longevity with like, especially it's like more Hydra Bane's an even better example. It's Marine Tank Viking, especially since you're already aiming for things like adding a few libs in. That is like the Hydra Bane. It's like you can wipe out a really high tier army with Hydra Bane if you get the right engage. Same with this stuff, except in TVT, that mid game is so protracted anyway, usually. So as long as you're using your army well and moving around, it's like, this guy got 5 bases and made BCs or had more Ravens than me. Like, honestly, if you see someone making a lot of Ravens, that's like a terrible idea. Ravens are such a fancy unit that it's so easy to fuck up with. I would advise nobody out there try to do this Raven stuff they see Kura and Maru and TY doing. It's incredibly hard to pull off. It's very easy to fuck up. So I wouldn't worry about Ravens. Definitely there are things to do with like multiple starport Vikings, range libs, even potentially battle cruisers. The ultimate harassment unit, funnily enough, is what the battle cruiser is, because their run bys are just absolutely devastating in the late game into mineral lines and teleporting away. But But yeah, it's generally speaking just going to be much more important to focus on how you use that army, because right when you think, "Ooh, I can't find an opening," it's like, well, actually, have you secured map control and taken 6 bases behind it? You know, have you added a few more barracks? Have you looked for drops? Have you been rotating around? Have you been using that kind of Viking advantage to push your way in and all that sort of stuff? And that's really powerful.
One final question.
Yep.
The armory, is that when 1-1's halfway done and then start 2-2 and vehicle weapons at the same time? Or is vehicle weapons more important?
I would always focus on 2-2, but since you're going more tank Viking, you could argue vehicle weapons is actually really important. By default, though, I think the standard thing is 2-2 is more important. Vehicle weapons is a great bonus upgrade. The slower you play, the more important it is. There's many players who go all their TVTs without ever building vehicle weapons, and they're still very hard to beat. You don't really notice it in the fights until you watch the replay afterwards. So, yeah, it's in a very scrappy game. You're on the back foot, you're trying to make a comeback. Don't give a shit about vehicle weapons, in my opinion. But yeah, if you want to just always add that with the 2-2 as a general rule, that's what I tend to do. If I'm in a normal game, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much.
It was the 4th and 5th factory, by the way, dude. What a maniac is Maru. He's like, shit, me 4th and 5th factory got scouted. Cancels them after the scan, puts down barracks. I'm like, oh, that's so bizarre. But very cool.
They're on a higher plane of existence.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they're so good at surviving and not being able to kill each other that you get to see like so many layers of kind of little tech switches and trying to gain advantages later on and stuff. But by golly, do they earn that right through their unkillability, right? You know, they just they do some fantastic things.
Question in chat. Do landed Vikings use ship weapons or vehicle weapons?
Pretty sure it's still ship weapons. I've never thought about it, but I'm pretty sure it's still ship weapons. They don't swap their guns out in any meaningful way. Before we go, actually, let's go look for one big fight. I want to see if there's any big obvious things. So yeah, the way TY did this, he was moving around for ages, and then here at 12 minutes, he moves up and he just gets this like lovely forward siege. But yeah, he doesn't have the Viking advantage or anything, and he's just like, oh, fucking 6 auto turrets get wrecked. But that sort of siege up, if you get a tank in range of the planetary, and remember, you don't want too many tanks in range of the planetary. You know why, right?
No, it does splash, but
well, I guess I should. I kind of made that question sound a bit dumb. If you're not focusing 100% on it, you don't want too many in range of the planetary. And that is because they'll keep shooting it. So if you've got all 8 tanks in range of the planetary shooting it, they start mass repairing, they can stim all their marines in. And if you don't focus fire those tanks, they are going to keep shooting the planetary while they get slaughtered by a pack of marines in a giant ball. Which is, you're like, you freaking
so
morons.
It's just one or 2 tanks in range to put a time.
Yeah. Like if there's a lot of things going on at once, like I have had moments where I'm oh god, I'm in a bad position, and then they make that mistake, and I'm doing enough like drops and lib harass and stuff that I'm kind of like catching them out of position a little bit, and yeah, and then I distract them enough, and then I'm like, wait, they're not watching, I bet, and I just stim in, and it's a huge gamble, but they don't change target. I kill all their tanks, and I go, woo, I'm back in this game. So TY here shows a lot of really great positioning, but he continually engages with like a small section of his army versus Maru's whole army. And it really shows that TY was in this like, I've got to break the mech player mindset. I want to use my mobility. I want to come in. He gets these lovely angles, and each time he's just like, all of his tanks get taken out by interference matrix. His beautiful concave of marines is like outnumbered by 3 times the unit, so it doesn't matter. So this is like TY shows us how to take engagements perfectly with the wrong unit count every single time. You know, he's like, catch the tanks on siege. So he's like, oh, there's more. There's enough tanks to beat my marine marauder. Oh shit. So very well played by Maru, who it feels like just kind of TY was like, I gotta break the mech player. I gotta break the mech player with the bio, and ended up not quite finding it. But yeah, mate, good stuff, good sesh. You now have a bit more of a focus, bit more of a game plan, and yeah, get
Definitely.
building those tech units and leveraging those into that advantage. And I really hope that works out.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome sauce.
Have a good stream.
Catch you later, mate. Good night. Alrighty then. Good little sesh there. I hope you guys enjoyed that TVT coaching session. And yeah, just a little bit of a review there of what was going on. And looking through the TVT. Hopefully that helps some of you a little bit. Some of it will, some of it won't. But appreciate it. Catch you guys in the next one.